Well, as we mentioned at the top of the show, in around 10 weeks' time, the United Nations Climate Change Conference will officially kick off, hosted by the UK and Italy, a huge moment for many countries, and the pressure in many ways is on Australia. Richie Merzian is the Director of the Climate and Energy Program at the Australia Institute. He joins us now. Welcome back, mate. Good to see you.
Morning, Adrian.
So firstly, what is the UN Climate Conference exactly? Break it down for us.
So every year, all the countries who are signatories to the major UN climate agreement meet, and they tease out the next rules, the next level of ambition that's required to address the climate crisis. This particular meeting in November, which the UK will host, is an important and significant one. It's 5 years, 6 years really, since the Paris Agreement, and it's stock take. So countries are looking at how much effort they've put on the table, what is the gap, how much is missing, and therefore how do we get to the ultimate objective, which is to avoid dangerous climate change, keep global warming to 1.5 degrees. And so far, we're all coming up short.
So why would you say this conference is perhaps more important than others? Not that any have been less important, but why is there more focus on this one? And what are your expectations in terms of what countries are going to commit to, what they're going to communicate to the rest of the world?
So the UN will release a report that actually adds up everyone's current efforts that they put on the table. Australia has put forward a target of reducing emissions 26% by 2030 off a 2005 baseline. Now, just last week, the United States came out and said that that target is insufficient. All G7 countries have actually increased their efforts because it's clear from the outset that targets are falling short. And recently, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the global consensus on climate science, has said that we are already in train for 1.5 degrees of global warming. So we're not doing enough. And Australia will be front and center in all this because it hasn't upgraded its target. Most of its allies say it's falling short. And I think the UK in particular will be looking to its key partner to do more when it hosts the conference.
So what will you be watching in terms of the Australian conversation over the next 10 weeks? Are we going to see global leaders put pressure on Australia? I mean, clearly, Prime Minister Scott Morrison has a lot on his plate at the moment, but he still needs to deal with this, as do his ministers. What are your expectations? What should we be looking for?
Well, just over the weekend, the German ambassador here in Canberra came out and made quite a rare public statement saying all countries should do more. That clearly includes Australia. So Scott Morrison, the Prime Minister, will be under clear pressure from allies, from friends to do more. That looks like doubling its current efforts. So from that 26% emission reduction target to 50%, because that short-term action is what's key, that's what's credible, and that's what everyone's looking for. But what the Australian government is actually looking at doing is only really focusing on the long-term objective, that net zero by 2050 that all the states currently have as their target. The federal government is considering whether to put that on the table. But even that is a struggle for the federal government, given it is unable to bring its Nationals coalition partner to the table. They've been pushing back against it. So the Australian government is well behind where other allies and like-mindeds are, and Prime Minister Scott Morrison will come under increasing pressure, particularly to attend himself as well.
And just finally, I think a lot of people out there would wonder whether conferences like this actually ever achieve anything. There can be a lot of talk, a lot of rhetoric, as we know. Do you have optimism that we can really get something done here?
It's a good question. I've gone to probably 6 or 7 of these conferences, and it's an incremental pace, which doesn't seem to match up with the nature of this crisis, which is overwhelming and immediate. But it's the best we have. This is how the world comes together to achieve progress. And when everyone is on the same page, that can happen. It happened in Paris in 2015, and everyone's hoping that it will happen now in 2021 in Glasgow in November. But what that requires is countries like Australia that have been laggards in the past, that have pushed back on pressure to do more, to actually look at what it can do, try and bring forward more, and actually work cooperatively with its friends and allies to do what is ultimately in Australia's interest, which is to avoid dangerous climate change.
Richie, great to chat. Hopefully we'll get to speak to you over these 10 weeks because this is going to be a major story, no doubt about it. Again, appreciate your time. We'll talk soon.
Pleasure.
The bottom 20% get nothing. They're really unfair tax cuts.
People want to see much stronger action from the government when it comes to climate change.
It's no coincidence that we have a wages crisis in Australia.
Transitioning to net zero emissions, it doesn't seem like there's much room for gas.